Everyone, I am once again bringing you a horror film that is truly terrifying. Today, we will be discussing the latest 2025 horror film, an uncanny train story set in Korea's Gwanglin subway station. It is reported that a number of highly unusual deaths have occurred at this location, and currently, a young woman named Su-sin is experiencing a mysterious incident. Su-sin was initially waiting on the platform to return home, as she would on any ordinary day. Suddenly, an unfamiliar woman beside her spoke without any warning.
코가 너무 예쁘세요.
Su-yin was taken aback, questioning whether the woman was indeed speaking to her. Confused, she chose not to respond. She turned her attention back to the tracks, yet the cold voice spoke once more.
코가 너무 예쁘세요.
Su-yin became increasingly uneasy, reluctantly replying with a thank you while growing internally alarmed. Who was this individual? What exactly was she trying to do? Just as she grew increasingly anxious, that voice spoke for a third time.
너무 예쁘세요.
Furthermore, the woman turned her head and gazed at Su-sin with a smile on her face. Su-yin felt a tingling sensation on her scalp and wondered in alarm. What on earth is going on? Overcome with fear, Su-yin promptly moved away from the individual. After walking a certain distance, she turned back to verify her surroundings out of concern. Su-yin was too frightened to make eye contact, and as soon as she turned her head, she heard approaching footsteps. The woman was moving towards Su-yin. She wished to call for help, but realized that those nearby appeared oblivious to the bandaged woman. A terrifying thought surged in Su-yin's mind. If others were unable to see her, then this entity could not be human. Even more alarmingly, the bandaged woman was holding a container of acid, evidently intending to disfigure her. Su-sin was utterly terrified and quickly fled to distance herself from the individual. Taking refuge in a restroom, Su-sin promptly used her phone to contact law enforcement, providing her exact location. Called the police. They said they would dispatch personnel immediately, but then the person on the line asked, "Could you provide a detailed description of the woman who is chasing you?" Instantly, Su-sin felt a surge of fear. She had never mentioned being pursued by a woman, so how did the officer on the phone know? This could only mean that the person on the line was not actually law enforcement. At that moment, Su-yin saw a hand reaching in from above the restroom, still holding the cup of acid.
We're called it, don't we have to say? Laughter. Ha. Aha. Ha. Ha.
Following Su-sin's tragic demise, rumors of supernatural occurrences at Gwanglin subway station began to circulate, which soon attracted the attention of a horror content creator. Recently, Xiaomei had run out of creative inspiration and lacked quality content, resulting in low viewership of her videos. She was frequently ridiculed by her colleague, Xiao. Therefore, she visited the subway station today to gather horror stories with the specific goal of making her videos go viral once again. Xiaomei located the administrator of Gwanglin subway station and was surprised that he was employed in such a position at this particular site. She believed he would have knowledge of the site's eerie events. But after stating her intentions, the administrator categorically refused to provide any information. Xiaomei had no choice but to present the premium liquor she had prepared in advance. Only upon seeing the wine did the administrator relent and agree to talk. He immediately began recounting the first horror story. Late at night at the subway station, an intoxicated young man named Xiao Shuai accidentally fell to the ground, and a group of kind individuals assisted him in getting up. Xiao Shuai observed a peculiar woman repeatedly striking her forehead against the wall. At first, Xiao Shuai thought the woman was drunk, just like he was. He did not give it further thought, and soon drifted off to sleep. When Xiao Shuai awoke, nearly all the passengers had left, leaving only an elderly man and the woman. At this point, the woman was still forcefully banging her head against the door, with increasing intensity. Sensing something was amiss, the elderly man quickly moved to the adjacent train carriage for safety. Witnessing this, Xiao Shuai also felt uneasy and followed him. He muttered to himself, "Is this perhaps an escaped mental patient?" At this moment, a friend sent him a video saying that someone had committed suicide by lying on the tracks at Gwanglin subway station. When Xiao Shuai opened it, to his astonishment, it was not the same woman from the train carriage. At that moment, while Xiao Shuai was still confused, the elderly man beside him suddenly began to strike his head against the wall.
Oh.
Shuir was utterly terrified as the two individuals began banging their heads faster and faster. Suddenly, the entire train lost power, plunging the surroundings into total darkness. The child immediately used his phone to illuminate the area and discovered that both the old man and the woman had vanished. However, was that truly the case? The woman suddenly reappeared. She began frantically ramming the door again, and after just 2 impacts, her head abruptly separated from her body and fell to the ground. Fortunately, it was only a dream. The train arrived at the station, and Xia Shuai promptly disembarked. At that moment, Xia Shuai finally felt at ease. However, the very next second, he once again heard the familiar sound of an impact. At that instant, Xia Shuai was bewildered, uncertain about what was happening. Is this a case of being trapped in a paranormal loop?
Hehe.
As Xia Shuai was pushed off the platform, the first story concluded. After hearing the story, Xiaomei promptly drafted a script, recorded a video, and uploaded it to Douyin. As expected, the video performed well. Many followers commented, expressing their desire for even more thrilling content. Thus, Xiaomei seized the opportunity and approached the administrator again to inquire whether there were more captivating stories. Upon hearing this, the administrator laughed heartily. He then recounted a second story at random. This time, the main character was a homeless individual. Being homeless, he was compelled to sleep in the subway station each day. To make matters worse, the little money he possessed was stolen by another homeless person. The man was filled with both anger and resentment. Upon seeing the intoxicated man ahead, he was filled with such rage that he wished he could rush forward and strike him down. However, Dekun's fate soon changed due to a coin. By chance, he discovered a red coin beneath a vending machine. As he picked up the coin for inspection, a new vending machine inexplicably appeared next to him. The man was perplexed, wondering about the purpose of this device. Noticing the numeral 1 on the machine, he realized it required 1 coin for 1 bottle of water. However, upon retrieving the bottle, he discovered that the cola was empty. The man realized he had been deceived and threw the bottle to the ground in frustration. Yet soon after, he noticed something unusual. A moment ago, a drunk individual stood opposite him, but he had now inexplicably vanished. Skeptical, he approached and found only a pile of clothing on the ground. Next to the clothing lay 2 red coins. At that moment, he seemed to realize what was truly happening. However, his top priority was to check if there was any money. This way, he would be able to have a full meal. Upon discovering the money, he was elated, hurried to a convenience store, purchased several large hamburgers, and ate ravenously. At that moment, he felt profoundly grateful to be alive. After satisfying his hunger, he returned to the vending machine. This time, the display indicated that 2 coins were required for purchase. Without hesitation, he inserted the 2 coins he had found earlier. However, as soon as he obtained the bottle of cola, the individual who had previously stolen from him reappeared. Seeing the man's aggressive stance as if he was about to strike again, the older man, frightened, quickly opened the can. In the next moment, the man spoke.
I'm able to. You get away.
The abrupt disappearance of the man deeply shocked the homeless individual. He realized that all those who had vanished were actually consumed by the vending machine. After the individual was fully consumed, 3 red coins appeared next to the clothing. Observing the vending machine return to normal, his greed overcame his fear. The man hurried over to the pile of clothing and began rummaging through it for money. The instant he saw the money, his inner demons were fully unleashed. From that point forward, he indulged in excessive eating, drinking, and committing robbery for money on a daily basis. However, this lifestyle did not endure for long. One day, while extremely intoxicated, he wandered aimlessly throughout the subway station. Soon after, he noticed something highly unusual. He unexpectedly saw a version of himself standing in front of the vending machine. At that moment, he realized he was trapped in an endless cycle. He intended to warn his past self, but was overcome by a wave of nausea. Then his past self opened the can, and the cycle began anew. Such despair and powerlessness can only be truly understood by the individual experiencing it. This concludes the second story. Although the story was incoherent and made little sense, Xiao Mei nevertheless found it somewhat frightening. Consequently, she revised the content and uploaded it online, which yielded even better results and led to an increase of 1 million followers. All of Xiao Mei's colleagues were celebrating her tremendous success. Xiao Chen, who was her main rival, watched this scene with intense resentment. Witnessing Xiao Mei's achievements made him nearly furious. Therefore, in order to capture Xiao Mei's online traffic and boost his own popularity, he also went to Guanglian subway station to conduct a live broadcast where he unexpectedly touched a sticky substance on the handrail, which was as unpleasant as mucus. Xiao Chen promptly wiped it off, but the following day, while washing his hands, he noticed a wound had developed. He immediately suspected it was caused by the substance from the previous day and went to the hospital for an examination. The physician diagnosed a bacterial infection and prescribed medication and upon receiving this information, Xiao Chen felt reassured. However, after work, he began to experience nasal bleeding. Additionally, honeycomb-shaped ulcers appeared on his palm, which greatly alarmed Xiao Chen. When the train arrived at the station, he rushed to the restroom to check, and to his shock, found that the symptoms had appeared on his other hand and even spread to his entire arm. Furthermore, similar lesions appeared on his neck as well. He attempted to apply the ointment, but it accidentally fell to the ground and was taken by another individual. It became evident that he had been deliberately targeted.
To be you. Yes, Linani, please speak. 도와드릴까요? Just as Brother Kai Lin did. You may sing from that point to here.
Why is the salary so low?
After Xiao Chen's death, the narrative shifts to Xiao Mei's perspective. At this time, Xiao Mei sought out the administrator once again, hoping he would share additional horror stories. However, the administrator replied that he did not have any horror stories to share. He explained that he had already recounted everything he knew, and if she wished to learn more, she would need to conduct her own investigation. In order to sustain her online popularity, Xiao Mei decided to pursue further investigation herself. By this time, the subway station should have been closed for the day, yet all the lights suddenly turned on, and there was a man sitting nearby playing with his phone. The man wore an exaggerated smile, appearing genuinely peculiar. Xiao Mei was somewhat uneasy. She had come here in search of horror stories and questioned the purpose of the man's presence. At that moment, a public announcement indicated that the train was about to arrive. The train arrived, and Xiao Mei quickly boarded. As the train departed and she moved further away from the man, she began to feel more at ease. However, when Xiao Mei turned her head, she was taken aback. The man had unexpectedly appeared in the carriage and was fixated on Xiao Mei with an intense gaze. Unable to endure his stare, Xiao Mei gradually moved away. As Xiao Mei relocated, the man's gaze continued to follow her. Eventually, Xiao Mei found the situation unbearable and quickly moved to another train car. However, before she could get far, the entire carriage lost power. Immediately thereafter, the man pursued her. However, the man merely stood at a distance, facing away from her. In the following moment, an incident occurred. Xiao Mei, greatly frightened, swiftly exited the carriage. As the doors closed securely and the train departed, she finally experienced a sense of relief. Nevertheless, it was not long before an antiquated train appeared before her. Just as Xiao Mei was feeling completely bewildered, the train doors opened. Xiao Mei noticed a walkie-talkie lying on the ground, and upon seeing it, she seemed to lose her sense of awareness. She involuntarily walked inside and picked up the walkie-talkie. As soon as the carriage doors closed, Xiao Mei regained her senses and realized she had been influenced by an external force. She attempted to exit, but the door was locked. At this moment, Xiao Mei saw the administrator, who looked at her and said plainly,
China will hang get things and they will go to the one. Sing that one.
Can you win the game? It appears that the administrator had malicious intentions from the outset. As the train began to move, Xiao Mei fell into despair. The scene changed and Xiao Mei's colleague arrived to look for her. He was scheduled to assist her with a recording and felt some frustration due to her absence. Moments later, Xiao Mei appeared with a peculiar smile on her face. It was clear that she was no longer herself, but had been transformed into another entity. This concludes today's story. Though the green hills remain and the waters flow on, let us bid farewell for now.